feels that.
This is Fern Halls.
And you are listening to Aetheryte Radio.
Aetheryte Radio.
Here we go.
All right, hello and welcome to Aetheryte Radio Gamerscape's Final Fantasy XIV podcast. We got everybody here. It's been a while.
It's us.
I've been sick. Rook was out doing things last week. We got everybody. Everybody's here.
Everyone is here.
Everyone, even chat.
But
all the people in chat over here, you're here.
yeah, you're here.
Hello.
But you know, in like 2 weeks, we're all gonna disappear again. So
Yeah, you know.
love us while you can.
It's just been it feels like it's been a really busy time of year for everybody.
Well,
It's been a wild time.
it's gonna get even crazier. I mean, right before here, Rook was out doing some life stuff, so we were talking schedule stuff. So after we're done here, we're gonna keep you for a minute. We gotta figure out some schedule stuff.
Sure.
We have November and December.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody go.
We hope you enjoy your time because we will see
Go
you.
watch VODs because boy, man, we got all sorts of stuff happening, and that's like not even with like holidays. Then you have the holiday stuff on top of that, so it's like we'll be here maybe a couple times.
We're gonna do our best, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So and we have the patch, so it's like go play Criterion for the next 2 months, and then we'll see you after that.
Man, I hope it's that good. Sheesh.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
lots of stuff coming up. Before we jump in today, we're going to be going back into our retrospective Final Fantasy XIV. So we are at Shadowbringers today. But first, we do have just like tiny, super tiny snippets of news. In case you missed it, FanFest has been announced for us here in NA, and I know we talked about this last week, but it's FanFest. We gotta make sure people are aware.
And it's in Vegas. I'm so happy it's in Vegas.
I'm like, cool, Vegas, and then they're like, also it's July, and I was like, but why?
It's fine.
I mean,
regardless,
I'm just glad they're doing it. I'm just glad they're doing it at the convention center because that has like, depending on how much of the convention center that they rent out and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that has so much more capacity. I have no personal interest in going to Vegas. I won't lie. It's not really my thing. But you sure as hell bet I already reserved a hotel room because I'm like, I'm going to do this. So help me. I want to be there so bad.
You know what? I'm a little bit surprised to hear that because I would think that you'd want to see like shows and stuff.
Shows, yeah.
Rook is like, I've seen both adaptations of The Stand. I don't need to go to Vegas. That's okay.
No, I don't want to go and gamble and stuff. I want to go and see all the shows.
Yeah,
and shows? Like go to the neat restaurants and stuff.
Yeah. Those are the big draws. I do like those. But I mean, here in Chicago, we do have a ton of shows and a ton of good food.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yes, July 28th and 29th in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center. For our friends across the pond in Europe, they're going to be in London. That's at XL London, October 21st and October 22nd. Not this month. It's not next week. It's next year. Just in case you're here and it's like, oh shit, like I got tickets. Are they gone next week already? Wow, no, you got some time. The Japan is early 2024. So typically tickets we see for this about 4 months out. So probably keep an eye out January, February-ish. We'll probably have further details, maybe more details before then. We don't know what health and safety, COVID policies, all that stuff. We have no idea. They just said, these are the dates. This is where it is. That's it. So
when we have FanFest Chicago, we'll all be able to stay with you in your new house, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's my goal. I've actually, it's very strict as we've been looking for a new house. I'm like, gotta have bedroom for Aetheryte Radio crew. If we can have 3 bedrooms for each of them, that'd be great. But like, I guess we could do a bunk bed situation.
we can, yeah. Dibs on
When
the
I'm having
bottom.
fun, I don't sleep. It's fine.
Oh, well then
I
there we
just
go.
won't sleep.
Not a big
It's
deal.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll have a nice like nook reserved for you somewhere, like a little book nook or something. You can like hang out there.
That'll
You can
be
just
great.
store me in a closet for a second. It's fine.
Yeah, that'll be great. But like, hey, Mom, guess what? The FanFest is in Chicago this year. Oh, great. So you're going to come. No, I'm not staying with you. I'm going to be over here. Sorry. Love you, Mom. Okay. So also, we have the EP2 for Endwalker is out now. So that's got some Four Fiends stuff. It's also got Scream and White Stone Black, which is the P8S track. So all that stuff, if you want to get it, it is available at all the places. It is digital only, so like you can't go to like your local record store and be like, I would like the vinyl of Endwalker EP. It's not a thing.
Unless it's a very, very good record store. Somehow they ordered it before you wanted it.
They custom made it, and they're like, maybe somebody will buy. I know it's super niche, but like you never know. All Saints Wake. This is going to be going live the day after the patch, so October 19th. There's going to be this cool kind of like alchemist, crazy scientist uniform. There's going to be an eat pumpkin cookie emote, a weird
Don't
cage
eat the poop.
ghost furnishing thing, and then they're also going to have like they put
It's a
this on the
wisp.
dev
It's a
blog.
ghosty wisp.
They're going to
It's
have
so
like
cool. I
a
like it.
It's like a little wisp table lampy kind of
yeah.
thing.
They're also doing like a
You know-
like an instance that's like a creepy photo shoot
Yeah.
space.
The haunted housey cute thing.
So that's something new. That's
I was
interesting.
really hoping that the wisp itself would die. The cage around the wisp dies, not the wisp. And I was like, man.
Yeah, that'd be too easy.
right.
No way. They're gonna, like, 2 years from now, they're gonna release a red one and a green one, and then you gotta go get that. You know.
Ugh.
Yep.
And then also, I know we mentioned a lot of this last week, but we just want to recap. New data center for North America is scheduled to arrive on Tuesday, November 1st. It's going to be called Dynamis. It's going to have 4 worlds: Halicarnassus, Maduin, Marlith, and Seraph. And then housing for that will start on November 5th. It'll be lottery again. So if you don't have a house and you really want a house and you don't mind transferring servers, that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
can still
about it.
visit your
It
friends
seems
now.
dumb, and I hate it,
It's
but I
fun.
thought about it.
I think you should. Honestly, I think you should.
You think I should?
I mean, probably should. I mean, Fusion, you've been very look, as your friend, I can say this because I love you very much. You've been very sad and bitter
That's true.
about the
That's true.
situation. So if it would alleviate some of that, you know, I mean, I say give it a shot. Try
But then
and
I
get
have
that
to
house.
decide which world to go to, and that's like a
Yeah.
whole other.
Just hit random.
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to leave my fate to random.
Pick the third one.
Pick the third one, Marlith.
Mm.
I don't even know what a Marlith is. Like
Multi-armed female demon
multi-armed
type looking.
female
Of course,
demon.
Aldiano
Yeah.
knows. Of course,
Final
Aldiano.
Fantasy 1. Yeah.
We'll see.
So
We'll
think
see.
like the Naga bodied with 4 arms and swords.
So like a Melusine.
This has awoken something in me.
Oh, okay.
Oh man! All right.
That's all.
So that's the news. Oh, special site has been updated for the patch. We're gonna get the like Grahatia like puppy
Emote.
eye emote.
Where he like Astinian is so
I'm trying to
cool."
do it and it looks awful. Don't look at that.
I thought it looked adorable, Fusion. Don't undersell
thanks.
yourself. I didn't know we were getting that though. Now I'm excited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're getting that. We know from Live Letter we'll also be getting some kind of corgi minion somewhere.
Yeah.
There's also a like a Alamegan throne. It's not quite a throne. It's probably just a super fancy chair because it's not the
Yeah.
throne. But it's like white and purple and gold. It's a flying
Yeah.
chair mount. So that's
comes
Off-colored,
from,
slightly bent tombstone
Criterion.
chair.
yeah.
It comes from Criterion, so it's Sildon or whatever.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Unless we learn something.
Yeah, unless we
secretive
learn
about where that
something new.
came From.
I don't know.
Is that a spoiler, Yoshi P? Did you spoil
Oh,
us?
man.
They had chairs.
Well, it had
Oh, no.
it had looking at the chair.
Yeah, it does
We
have
were
like,
going
the-
to talk about Shadowbringers, but we're going to spend the next 2 hours just analyzing this
Yeah.
freaking chair now. It has, it's got some grapes on the side there.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I mean,
Mhm. Just like the
see,
sunken temple.
I see grapes and I immediately go to Karn.
Mhm.
So
Here we go.
speculate,
When are we gonna
speculate,
get-
speculate.
When are we going to get a feed grapes emote that's persistent so that you can feed someone grapes? When are we
I
getting
definitely want to see
Please.
at some point, like duo emotes. I know some games
Yeah.
have them.
Yeah.
Be like pick up your friends that came around and shit. That'd be great.
It'd
Yeah,
be so cute.
I don't know how they would do it in 14. Like Destiny has it, and the way that it works is like it basically turns into like an interaction spot. So you just go and hit
Yeah.
like E or whatever, and it joins in. But we don't really have that in
Susano?
14. You would have to like be able to click on the person.
The little spot where you click on it and then you
Yeah,
lock the
Susano.
sword.
Yeah, but it would have that. But then the emote would have to create
Yeah,
a
it's true.
spot, and that seems
It's
like
true.
that seems.
But I'm like, just
potentially
reuse that.
tricky.
I think they could do it. They could do it. It would. I mean, it would take involve. Like
Yeah,
it would
it'd be
make
a-
them.
Look, we were
do the
gonna
whole system,
increase
but-
the graphics in 7.0, but people really want to be able to be fed grapes, so
Grapes. No, I'm
that's
ready
it.
for the graphics.
that's all the
Yeah.
news. That's all the news. So
I
we're gonna
think
go
so.
ahead here and jump into and continue our retrospective here on Final Fantasy XIV. We are at Shadowbringers now.
We are, and
What you must.
this was, I think, actually the first formal review, like the first formal expansion that all of the podcast reviewed. I was not myself. I was taking the form of Brian
Mhm.
at the time, but
It's quite
this
a
is
change.
It was a pretty big change. It was a pretty radical change. But this was the first one, as far as I could find when I was putting this together, where all four of you actually, well, four, including myself as Brian, actually reviewed and did your own like words for a review on Shadowbringers. I don't know if everybody wants
This
to read
was-
their own thoughts.
Yeah,
that
so
they
this
have,
was
but-
just I mean, for people like what? So I think I reviewed Heaven's Word as just like a standalone like review. 'Cause that's when we really started to pick up with reviews for the site. But then I think it was the end of Stormblood where we did our first like patch review. And so when Shadowbringers came up, we're like, all right, we'll just we tried to come up with like this formula, and we're like, we'll use this for everything, and then we changed it, and because why would you stick with something? And so yeah, this was the first time we did it. I mean, this was also for me. I mean, this was coming off Avengers Endgame. No, Avengers Infinity War. Right. So I'm like, if you're new to the show, me gusta MCU. I love the MCU. I think it's great. It's like, I'm all about it. So like for me, like having Shadowbringers, I ended up calling it like an Avengers level event because it's just it brings everything together, right? Like it's just all these things that we knew, so a little bit of new stuff, and it's just like this journey. And like that was I was like, yeah, it's like Avengers, and it's great.
I think what I said was it's hard to say everything I need to say about this, but it's amazing. And I've always been a really big fan of alternate reality stories. So when they threw us like feet first into one, I was like, hell yeah! How could the world be different? This is so sweet. So I was very into it. It's very cool.
Yeah, I kind of like the first a little bit. I don't know if anybody knew that at all.
yeah.
But I kind of like it. And
Okay.
really, I know that my review, the biggest part of it was the story. And I know that I said it was the best story in like 15 or 20 years with Final Fantasy's name on it. And that is targeting like 12 or 10, I would say. 11 got there eventually. It was pretty good. But like for mainstream, I think the story of Shadowbringers, when taken in context with everything else that Final Fantasy XIV has given us, was easily on par with that golden age,
Like how you just switched your background, like, surprise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to be here
I don't know if you knew this, but he likes the
Yeah,
first.
yeah. I
This
have
is
to
actually
actually
the,
say
the landing
ahead.
page for the D&D game. Yeah.
they're good. Yes, I actually loved what Brian said in his review about this because I actually think it summarizes so much of the entire community's feeling when this expansion dropped. Brian had said, while the story benefits from years of stories before this one, it capitalizes on those years and its characters to such perfection that it stands out as perhaps one of the greatest Final Fantasy stories to date. The story of Shadowbringers stands on par with that of a single-player Final Fantasy so much that it raises the bar for future numbered titles in the series. And I mean, really though, like that is such an incredible way to put it because I wasn't here to review it, but I probably would have said something almost exactly the same myself, because this was not just an expansion that I think defined Final Fantasy XIV, right? This expansion was an expansion that received so much praise, so many accolades, so many things that we just saw this repeated across reviews and across public opinion over and over and over again. This isn't just a great MMO story. This is a phenomenal story in the gaming space, period. And for a very long time, MMOs have not had that kind of recognition. When you think about what people say about games, or when it comes to awards and things like that, MMOs are usually their own category and people praise them for very specific things. But having a story that like revolutionizes or completely changes how you perceive a franchise is not something that MMOs have oftentimes been praised for. And Shadowbringers was one of those expansions that I think not only confirmed what 14 had been doing in the space all along, where they said, hey, we're going to go whole hog on our story and narrative, and we believe that players will love that, even though so many other games shy away from it. They try to do this MMO formula, or it's like an episodic thing where you can take or leave every expansion. And they really doubled down on their storytelling and then did something pretty radical and pretty phenomenal with Shadowbringers, with even recontextualizing everything you thought you knew about the story up until that point. And I mean, it was a phenomenal expansion. And I think it really opened a lot of doors for MMOs as a whole to say, hey, no, we can tell incredible narratives and we can be right up there with single player games.
Well, and I think too, a large drive of that. I mean, obviously, like we've talked about all the other versions of 14 leading to this, right? We talked about A Realm Reborn, Heavens. Yeah, I was old habit. I don't know, man.
It's a different version of 14. I love it.
I mean, kind of. But you know, this game has had great story already. But what really changed, I think, with Shadowbringers, especially looking at this quote from Brian, is that it stands on par of that with a single player Final Fantasy. With Shadowbringers, we had trust for the first time, and you could play through the story by yourself, trials exempt, right? But like, I think for a lot of people, you know, especially maybe on the media side, review side, right? The idea of, okay, and even from the narrative side, like, yes, we've had these kind of road trips, right, with characters. I mean, that's what Heavensward and Stormblood were. It's all right, we'll pick these couple of characters and we'll go around to all the different areas and some stuff will happen. And I mean, the same is true with Shadowbringers, but it's more of a tight-knit group with that, and it sticks together instead of like, okay, like over here something happens, that character goes away for a little bit. It's the same core group throughout the entire expansion because of that trust system. And I think that helped in a lot of different ways, right? To really help push the narrative and
I remember
even the gameplay.
At the time when we were talking about it, when you get to the end of that first chunk of story, we all kind of had the agreement epiphany that it's like, this is the point in time where the characters start to feel like their own people. It took a while to get there, but the characterization really like started to hit home there.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, right, that's not to say that we haven't had hints of that before. Like, you know, Alice pushed Alphino in the water in Stormblood. Like that, you know, that was there. But it's just, you're spending a lot more time with them in the narrative because of the trust system. They need to be around. And I thought that ended up working very, very well for Shadowbringers.
And this was also the first expansion that Ishikawa was the, like, oversaw all of the narrative, right? Because she had done writing in Stormblood, and some of the most beloved zones were like directly a product of her genius. But I think a lot of what we see there really can be attributed to her and her great strengths as a writer. Not to say that the whole team does not also contribute to this, but she has such a strong push for the humanizing element of characters. She really looks for those things that resonate with you, the small details, the small emotional beats. And I think we saw
make you cry.
Things that make you cry so much. But I think we really saw that start to shine in Shadowbringers. And then, of course, I mean, I love what you said about the trust and everything, because that was a system that was introduced here that does, I think, make it feel even more tightly knit as a single story. But I mean, the twists in Shadowbringers were phenomenal, and we'll get to that later as well. But I think it takes not only having a really phenomenally well-established world where your lore and everything is so coherent and you understand it and you've really made it something, but then I think it takes a huge amount of gall and innovation and bravery to then say, okay, what would be like the conventional way we go about this? Okay, they're all evil and that's just what it is, and then Zodiark's the big bad at the end and it's all bad. But to do this thing that essentially recontextualized the entire narrative, the entire game, that allowed them to take their own ownership over something that they had been grappling with the remnants of since 1.0, and to, I mean, have such a well-established world that they could in many ways flip it on its head in how we understood it as players, is still one of the most profound moments in storytelling I think I've ever had in an MMO. Like those last zones, oh my gosh.
No, that reveal. I mean, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. So what out of all of Shadowbringers, what stands out to you the most? I mean, there's so many things, right? It's such a big question.
I know. What do I remember most specifically?
For
The
some
first.
reason-
The first.
Yeah. Okay. For some reason, the thing that comes to me the most quickly, and I don't know if this is the right answer, but the thing that comes to me the most quickly is going from thinking Emet-Selch was just a terrible villain to being like, oh my goodness, this is an interesting character.
Yeah.
He's such a quippy little shit, and he won't leave me alone, but I love him. He makes
Yeah.
the story very interesting.
Zanidra, I agree with you, and I'll push that even further. The level of thirst. I have never been so parched in my entire life.
Oh my god.
And I went, it was the same kind of journey. I was like, this man is a nincompoop and I hate anytime he's on the screen, to now, like, I have the thirst of an ocean in me, and it's good because he's at the bottom of the ocean. So I'm gonna drink my whole way down, and then I'm gonna end up with this weird Shakespearean idiot. And I just, not an idiot, it's terms of affection. No, his character, Emet-Selch stands out for sure.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I remember, and you can go back because I said it multiple times. I mean, we were introduced to Emet-Selch at the end of Stormblood, and I said I didn't like Arden in 15. I don't like him in 14 because he just felt like a weird kind of wasn't my thing.
Look at that plush. Where that plush come from?
But then Shadowbringers came in, and Ishikawa took that big stinky pile of clay and sculpted it a little bit, and I was like, okay. Stinky pile.
There's two of them. All right.
Look,
Where are you getting these?
I get them from Etsy, the amazing fan artists that create, and then you can dress them up. This one has little booties. You can take them off his feet, and the booties have the garlic on them.
So for Halloween, you're gonna put those on one of the cats, right?
This one has a removable mask. That's all. Emet-Selch, I would say, was a high point for me as well.
Definitely a standout.
Yeah, I mean,
You guys keep talking about Shadowbringers real quick. I gotta go to Etsy.
I'll try and find the links. They usually do like pre-order batches.
Okay.
I think for me, like, Emet-Selch was a part of it, but I think it was like the Ascians in general, because for me, I love Emet-Selch. Don't get me wrong. I have just the utmost respect for that character at all, because that's a hard character to pull off, and they did it impeccably, and it kept growing. He kept growing when we see him again later on.
You thought he was done.
Yeah, right? And it just gets layers and layers. But for me, the Ascian of Shadowbringers that got me was Elidibus. Because, like, this whole twisting the heroes to do your bidding by inspiring them to become heroes, to be the source of the myth almost, like, that's so cool.
Yeah. 5.3, man.
Yeah, 0.3, like Heroes Gauntlet into the rest of it.
There's so much around that too, right? I mean, because that was the first patch affected by the pandemic. So we went longer without a patch, and then we finally get it. And the patch, just because like it shows up on your, you log into the game, and there's just this hand, and it just comes out, just grabs you by the throat, and it's like feelings. And I'm like, I'm not ready for this. It was,
I like feeling feelings.
Yeah.
I love that this
Squeezes
game
all
makes
the
me feel
tears.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
All the tears right out of you.
I think
It's so good.
It's like 1 and 1A. It's just the Ascians in general, and then the bullet points are Elidibus for me and Emet-Selch for sure.
One thing I also really remember, and this is just just such a, I don't know, a random thing to recall really distinctly. But I think the moment of when you first awaken on the first, and all the light and that shot and the music and the purple trees, I felt so ridiculously enamored in that moment of
Well,
just
and then the one merchant shows
everything.
up, and it was what was it, G? Their names were with G or C or what?
Yeah.
It's like the same naming pattern as the guy that starts you off in A Realm Reborn. It's like really, really
yes.
strong.
I mean, it's so good though.
I can't believe that we haven't already talked about this fellow, but
And then he dies.
taking Grahatia from what he was and then making him into what he is in the first, and like thinking about what this sweet little boy has gone through. That's just so like heart shattering. It's not heartbreaking, it's heart shattering, it's heart rending.
Yes. And then how they somehow wove in the Crystal Tower and Alexander into this whole narrative. I mean, something that did become a big part of this, actually, I don't even think that I had put on the outline, was the fact that this was one of the first times that they had retroactively taken a piece of content and made it mandatory for a future expansion. And, well, okay. It did not start out as mandatory, but as people discovered, and even as my partner discovered, as we played through side by side, I've talked about it before on the podcast, if you hadn't finished those quests or like turned in the last one for whatever reason, even if you had a lot of the towers unlocked, you would get different cutscenes.
Yeah.
And so you would have moments where, like, as we were playing side by side, that moment where you finally call out, Grahatia, I know who you are, and that whole thing, like, you haven't done Ben New the whole time, you know? That whole moment was totally different for my partner than it was for me.
No.
And yes, and like, you can't even say you know who he is if you hadn't done it.
It's weird, yeah.
So it was like, it went from this real tearjerker of a moment to like my partner being like, this sucks. What do you mean I don't get to do this just because I didn't do it? So like, obviously this led them to then reconsider down the road how they would handle integrating narratives like this. And we have seen them shift to just a more mandatory system, which was something that Shadowbringers also introduced that I hadn't really thought about until this moment. But it was so great. Like, if you had done it and you had your inklings, right? And then to see how they wove all these stories together. And I think for the first time took this big leap in Shadowbringers to make old, seemingly disconnected content an ongoing relevant part of the world. I really did appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna, like, we've talked a lot about the story. Like, obviously the story is great. I think the things that I remembered the most, gameplay wise, was the machinist rework. Because like I played a lot of Machinist in Stormblood, but like also you know it had issues. I mean, it still has issues. But just the way that they changed it up for Shadowbringers, it was like a whole other job, like a whole new job, and it felt so great. I mean, that was my main for all of Shadowbringers was Machinist, so that was really cool. I think the thing that is always going to stick with me the most, though, is watching that full cinematic from the Japan.
I was going to say that, like, watching that and listening to Graha doing like the...
we don't even need Graha. You could remove him from the opening video and it wouldn't affect my thoughts here. But
all right,
some of you will probably, if you're listening, I slipped 11 earlier. We have this shot where you come out and it's just like the Crystal Tower, and then there's like the city, and you're like, I feel like I've seen that before. And then they have this whole panel later where it's like, yeah, it's from like that tech demo. I'm just like,
yeah, that was cute.
That was awesome. The freaking Rapture tech demo, like that for me was like, that was awesome. That they were like, yeah, we're gonna like recreate this thing, and I'm like so many people like hadn't seen that, right? But then there's like that little group that's like, oh, I remember that. Like, I was big into 11. We thought this was gonna be like the next big MMO. And now it's in 14. Like, that was cool as hell. So yeah.
Now the Endwalker is probably my favorite expansion. My favorite trailer is Shadowbringers. There was
it starts
so much in there.
The way that it starts too, and we still don't have this damn armor in the game, Yoshida. Like, where is this armor? It's the Warrior of Light walking around in the armor from the 1.0 cinematic.
All the throwbacks that we have from 1.0.
I remember sitting there in the front row at the Vegas Fan Fest, and he comes up and he's wearing that 1.0 armor. I lost it. I was like, what does this mean? Like, it was just, oh my God. Yeah. So.
But yeah, no, it's funny that you should also bring up the trailer, because that's the next thing I wanted to bring up. And specifically, like I was saying, the Graha part where he's like narrating the,
Yeah.
you know, be what you must, do what you must do, et cetera, et cetera. That was just so like right to my heart. Like, this is dramatic. Shit's hitting the fan. We gotta go.
I mean, the
And I loved it.
community still quotes that, become what you must.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Throw
still
wide the
something-
gates.
Yes, that has become so iconic in
it.
the whole community. It was like ripples. It was really huge for sure.
There are a couple other things. I keep thinking of different down the
And
things
you know,
are great.
we'll probably hit it as we go along here, because
Yeah, I hope
we
so.
still got a lot to talk about. One of the other things too about Shadowbringers, smoothest expansion release, like not just for 14,
Ever.
but maybe of any
Ever.
online game
In the
ever
world.
in
Yep.
the history of
Ever.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah, really, truly, genuinely, I was
don't
blown
remember
away.
having any issues ever. Yeah.
Yeah. And coming from Stormblood, which during our own retrospective, we talked about a lot of the problems with that. We've talked about, you know, even as we've done our reviews with Endwalker, although we haven't gotten there yet in our retrospective, right? But the login server issues, everything. Out of all of the history of Final Fantasy XIV, Shadowbringers was honestly a near perfect expansion release for an MMO. I was blown away. I don't even remember there probably were login queues, but I don't even remember it actually being a problem. I don't remember server crashes. I don't remember weird bugs. They did the story in such a way that obviously you have the Alisei Alphino split, so you can
There was
choose
no
between
dealing with
them.
Raban.
Yeah, no Robot Extreme, no Pippin Extreme. It was just a genuine, smooth sailing kind of delightful experience from beginning to end to go through with everybody. And, you know, I wasn't having to comfort friends that were like, I can't get in. You know, like,
It's like,
or
oh
those-
man, I'm so sorry. I just got into the next dungeon. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah, I can't remember a hiccup. I'm trying to very, and you know, two of us are on Balmung, and
I feel
even
like
then I don't remember.
I feel like I vaguely remember maybe like somebody tried to DDoS and maybe I got disconnected like once, like the entire first week.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
I have this memory of being like on the beach fighting something in Collusion, like getting DC'd or something.
I do remember
I don't know why I
DDoS,
remember
like,
that.
Yeah.
like maybe towards the end of the first week, there were some
Yeah, I think
DDoS
so.
attacks.
Yeah.
But even those, they handled beautifully. Like, I don't remember them disrupting things long term. You know?
Why are you mad we're having a good time?
Because everybody's always mad.
And
They're just
they didn't-
jealous.
They didn't have to halt sales of the game.
Yeah. It wasn't
mean-
too successful.
Yeah, it was pretty impeccable, which is a huge testament, especially with 14, because I do think 14 doesn't even have quite as flexible a server infrastructure
Right.
as certain other games do at this point. So that was a real testament to their work and preparation and meticulous integration of feedback and reception from the previous expansion, you know? Yeah, it was so smooth. It was so great.
And of course, with Shadowbringers, 2 new jobs. We got Gunbreaker and we got Dancer.
This was interesting.
Zen, what is this look? What are you doing? You're like crossing
The
your
question.
arms and
The question in there is favorite new class, and I'm like, yeah, you know. I
Gunbreaker
did
for
get
you,
that.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
The one thing that it's so funny. This was actually kind of radical, these two classes. I think they've ended up being real favorites. I mean, for many, many people, Gunbreaker had that phenomenal design with the almost DPS style combo chains that people really loved. I found myself enjoying playing it even, and also because I'm a huge 8 fan, I'd been like waiting.
Right. I mean, that was the thing. They're like, man, how can we get Fusion to tank? What if we just like make them use a Gunblade?
Yeah,
And a bunch of the animations are going to be borrowed from 8. Oh man, you guys are also the raid for Shadowbringers is eaten. All right, you son of a bitch, I'm in. Let's
That's
go.
it.
And then Dancer, right? Like this is I love Dancer, and I love Dancer as it is. And Zenidra, obviously, it was your true calling. It was your true purpose. You've been waiting for this day. You were born anew this day to become the true dancer that you were meant to always be. This is so funny for me, and I don't want anybody to be like, "Rock, blah, blah, blah," but like, how could you?
I'm ready.
Because these were just my emotional feelings. I have not had in a fan fest like a visceral disappointment reaction, with the exception of one time. And the one time was when they announced that Dancer would not be a healer. And I was genuinely, I was upset.
Yeah.
Like I had trouble the rest of that stream even feeling like excited. And it honestly surprised me even, because normally I try to be a fairly even keel person, right? I've got my passionate opinions on things and emotional responses. But when it comes to, game news or expectations and stuff like that, I'm never of that opinion of like, okay, let's go so over the top that we're bombarding the devs with anger. Like, that's not me. I'm not, and so I was actually surprised at the time by how I felt about that, because it was one of the first times that I could remember, at least, that they had broken up doing a tank and healer, and I had been waiting for the new healer so expectantly. And then they had done these astrologian changes, and I was like, why is this happening? And I was so disappointed. And I love it how it is now, right? Like, it's fine. I think Dancer is fantastic, and I think it's great as a DPS. But yeah, I remember having a really strong reaction to that.
I recall being on the other side of that, like being with a couple of healer friends and just seeing that, and I'm like, fuck, oh no, don't beat me up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I remember you saying this before. Yeah.
I was fine with the reveal, but at the media tour.
Yes, we had to bring this up. We had to bring this up.
Tell you.
So
I was sitting there, and we're getting the lowdown. Like, this is what Dancer is. It's physical range, and I'm like, cool. And it's like, we're gonna de-incentivize buffs, and I'm like, cool. That seems good. But only one job is gonna have a bunch of buffs, and that's Dancer. And I'm like, I hate the very idea of it.
They're talking. So the way that the media tour worked, and I know we've talked about this before, but like they have like the really cool. The video that they put out, right, showing off the jobs and rotations and new stuff, and then they have the live letter where they talk. That's what we get. We just get it like a month early. Okay, so they're presenting Dancer to us. And they're like, yeah, there's like this physical range, and it's gonna have all the utility because it's new. And I just remember me and Charles, like, we just looked at each other like, that sounds horrible. Like, what? This is like the Stormblood equivalent of like, we're going to try and minimize the amount of buttons that people have to push, but also add duty actions. What? That's kind of...
Which they never went back to.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just like, fundamentally, I don't like that idea, and it's not the reason for the issues right now, but it didn't help, right? Like, if they had not consolidated onto one job and given Machinist a little bit and given Bard a little bit more and make it affect them.
It didn't last too long, though. Like, they came back and they're like, all right, we'll give Bard a little bit more utility back. Machinist can still be the selfish asshole with the robot.
I mean, there have been very few things in this game that have actually made me do like a double take at the job team. I mean, of course, there are all sorts of things where we critique, we discuss, but 99.9% of the time, I logically understand what they are trying to do. I'm like, I understand where this is coming from, even if it doesn't feel good to play, even if there's critique or feedback about this. I fundamentally understand the direction you're taking. One of the very few times I've ever remembered being like, what? Was when they were like, and Bard has no more buffs. And I went, why do you have a Bard then?
Bard has always been one of those jobs for me. Like, after they stopped like the refresh stuff, utility stuff, like, it made no sense. Like, to this day, the fact that like Bard has a thing called Mage's Ballad, right? It has nothing to do with mages or refresh or anything, and I'm just like, what is this supposed to be? But Dancer was funny too, because like they announced Dancer, and it's funny because like when the Stormblood cinematic hit, we're like, oh look, it's a Dancer, and they're like, no, it's just a monk. So we finally got Dancer. We're like, okay, cool. And at the end of my time playing 11, I was a Dancer main. Totally different job than what it is in 14 now. So like for a minute, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, let's see what it's not quite the same. Also, the randomized, like, sequential bullshit that was on Machinist, they took it off Machinist, but then they put it on Dancer. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like that. I mean, obviously, I ended up leveling Dancer to 90 or whatever. Anyway, because since I was leveled to Machinist, I had the gear already, so I might as well.
You can look on Lodestone. There is one job in this game that I have never even unlocked, and you can guess which one it is. Like that is
Scholar.
I was
Dancer?
so yes, I've never unlocked it.
Wow.
I will at some point.
What?
It
just
just rankled me so hard
I
because
just figure at this point it's because you know you'll never be able to play it because it's mine.
I mean,
It's the Nitros, yeah.
True, but I
you were
don't
saying.
like the very idea of putting all the utility on one class. It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
Even as
just
somebody who switched to that job, I was like,
Like,
why?
and even
there should
even
be multiple
then,
jobs
like,
that can do the same thing. That's how all of the job types work.
At the very least, bars should be in parity with that utility. Like, holy crap.
Yes. So all of that aside, while that was a very strange move, I actually do love Dancer. See, I'm a big fan of random sparkly RNG bullshit. I genuinely like them. Not to the point where you feel like you're being cheated from something, but I've never really felt that, at least in the years that I have played 14, that even the classes that had RNG were doing that to me. Because they oftentimes give you so many other tools to be able to still control your pacing, control your stuff, you know? And one of the things that I thought was so fun about Dancer was not only how they envisioned having the steps, the different flourishes, the things that you use, the little tambourine, tinkle, 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 when you do your little steps. And then all the procs where you have this really fast, like frantic, almost crescendo where you're firing all your stuff off. I genuinely love that. And I still think it's really fun. How that affected other classes was different, but as we have with Dancer, I think the animations, the actual play, for me, I genuinely do love it, and I like
the job identity I think is really good with Dancer.
It's hard to screw it up though because your actual attacks are dancing. So
yeah,
it's not like they can be like, and you don't have your fairy anymore. What are you now?
I do remember playing Dancer, and I think really as I was leveling up, I do like a lot of alliance raids and stuff with it. I remember it felt really good to AOE on Dancer. You just kind of run around and you spin around and like it was. I remember that I enjoyed that. Yeah, I mean, gosh, what else did we have with Shadowbringers? Was that when they removed that was when they adjusted tank stance, right? I think so. There wasn't an attack stance and a tank stance.
So. Yes, I think you're right. That was Shadowbringers? I feel like that was Shadowbringers.
We got some gap closers as well. Which was really nice.
The best balance we'd ever had.
Charged abilities.
Even with the
charged abilities, yes. Yeah. That was the big thing.
And it was great balance. Really, really good.
Even with the weird change as far as Bard and Machinist losing things, it was still everybody was really better balanced.
Machinist was so good. We're gonna give him this multi-tool. It's like a drill, it's an air anchor, it's a bioblaster, it's an autocrat. It just that job felt so damn good. And I remember, going back to the media tour. So we've been lucky enough that both me and Aldi got to go to the media tour for the last few runs. So we're able to kind of divvy up the workload a little bit because there's a lot of stuff to try and cover in the time you have there. And bless Aldi. He's over there working his ass off. And I'm like, hey, if you could just take care of X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to be over here playing Machinist because this thing is bananas. It was so hard going back to Stormblood, going back to 4.5 live on the servers after playing the media tour Machinist, because I'm like, this thing sucks now. I don't want reload ammunition. What is this shit? Where's my robot? It was just, man, it was wild. Machinist was the rework was so good.
Did we get direct hit?
Oh.
Or was that?
Yeah.
I'd have to look that up. I will.
You have to double check that.
I can't remember.
They did make it so that some of the job gauges that had felt particularly awkward in Stormblood started to have better cohesion with classes as well. White Mage, for example, was the most awkward, terrible thing with that gauge. It was the most bizarre thing, and it felt so terrible. And it felt like you were getting punished because you had to play in the least efficient way possible to do a thing that didn't even matter.
It was
so like it was so counterintuitive to like the flow and measure of how you would use something like that. So there were some good reworks, I think, in fixing some of that.
It wasn't direct hit, it was piety in 5.0. So the piety changed to fix us all at 10k MP.
That's right. That's
like an
right.
MP thing.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
At which point they
Removal
took
of
away
TP as well.
all-
no more.
yeah.
No
that
more
was
TP.
before.
Was that
Yeah, it
before?
was before. Yeah, that came with
Stormblood?
accuracy
That's
in
already
Stormblood.
done
Yeah.
happened.
Oh.
But they also took away things like refresh because they were like, hey, MP is different now. You don't really need refresh. Mages handle that on your own.
Yep. We did have mana shift though.
Yeah, I'm still kind of I don't know. I get why they did it because they, I think heard from the community a lot that MP and balancing mana management for players was something that caused some stumbling blocks or discrepancies between classes, right? At various points with a healer, you'd have like one healer that was struggling so hard with MP, and then you'd have other healers and they were like, I've got MP forever, and then they'd just be like laughing in the distance.
Yep.
So I understand why they did it, but at the same time, I feel like part of even the things we were talking about with balance, right? Range of utilities, range of support, range of buffs, and possible available utility in this game. Some of the seeds of what would be happening now with our balance, as we discussed a few weeks ago, I think started with some of this. Not like it's not massively responsible, but when you start making, like you take away resources and then you start capping resources, then making it so that everybody with very little effort can maintain mana, although they would still continue to refine this and try to tweak this and make it easier and easier and easier, even into Endwalker. I think some of that has removed, again, more options for there to be usefulness for other people to help.
It all started when they took away Protect and Shell.
Oh my god. On the flip side of things, the way that healers in like Savage raids at least had to balance their mana was difficult before.
Yeah.
So it was a quote unquote good change, but maybe not the change that was needed.
Yeah, we lost a lot of the role actions in Shadowbringers.
Yeah, it was better, but not good.
Yeah. It's really interesting because like you said, it kind of set the tone that we kept running along, right? They paved this road, and then Endwalker they went, okay, well we're gonna have to build on that, and that I think is where we start getting into the issue, right? Because we had direct hit in Stormblood, and people were like, okay, that's pretty good, it's better than accuracy, and then we just throw more random on top of it. We throw 2-minute buffs at the beginning of Endwalker because still during Shadowbringers, everybody was on their own timer a little bit. You'd line up every once in a while, but it wouldn't be as important as it is now. So it really was, I think, why balance was so much easier to understand back then at the very least. Even if it wasn't closer, which it was that too, it was easier to understand. Like you understood why your damage was what it was. And now, without an imaginary abacus that doesn't exist, it's so much harder to even, why didn't I do as much damage as I feel that I should have done?
Yeah.
Well, when you go back and you look at it and you figure out, oh, you didn't crit in your opener. That's it. That's the only difference you needed. You could press those same buttons in the same exact way, but you didn't crit. Yeah. Like that's where you start to get into that.
Yeah, and it's like what Ren was saying when they were here with us before. When your rotation is more loose, you can sort of wiggle it around a little bit more. When everybody's on the same stringent pattern, there's no room to wiggle.
And you will get mad at the people who do not conform. Like that's a point of friction that didn't need to be expanded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I you know what, I'm not even gonna, that's gonna be a whole other tangent. I'm just gonna stop.
Right.
I'm just gonna stop. But yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Also with Shadowbringers, we got not one, but 2 new races.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, and I'm just gonna say it, this was the worst part of the expansion. Coming into this,
It was best to worst. It was so fast because I was so excited when they announced it. I was so out of my mind. I love Vieira so much, and then it was like straight down to the bottom.
There was, I mean, I remember there being, and it wasn't even just necessarily the announcements themselves. It was also how Yoshida positioned himself when
That
asked
FanFest was a freaking roller coaster
about some of the stuff. Because so they're like, hey, Vieira, and everyone's like, yes, this is what we've wanted. And then they also go, but you only showed female. We're getting male, right? Yep. And Yoshida's like, I guess we'll just have to see. And I'm like, I don't like that answer. And then they're like, Hrothgar, we're going back to single gender races. I'm like, why the you 2.0, you fixed this. We had this issue in 1.0. 2.0, you're like, let's stop that stupid bullshit idea. And then you repeat it. Yoshida, no. And then they can't wear hats. Like,
it's only been 10 years. Why are you fucking yourself so hard?
Seriously, like the way that they announced these races, the way they handled that, the way they responded to media questions about it, giving people a little bit of hope that, oh yeah, we're gonna get like male Vieira and it's gonna be great. And it's no, like finally we did an Endwalker because of the demand, but they still can't wear hats. Like this is the worst, most half-assed thing Square Enix has done, not just in this expansion, in the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV. And we're still dealing with it today.
Yeah.
It was bad, and I think we've talked about it enough.
Yeah. If you want to hear more information about this, go listen to literally any episode ever.
Yeah.
It's not good. Everybody knows it's not good.
No, it's bad.
Go. One more thing.
There's a siren going by and it's taking so long. I was hoping it would pass, and then I could speak.
Just do it. Let it add. Let it fuel the rage.
This is the Vieira rage siren. No, I do want to say all of this for all that we have critiqued. And again, yes, please refer to any of the past episodes ever since this happened, because we have probably talked about it at least once on each and every one of those casts. So I won't dive directly into that. But one thing I will say is that for all that there were massive issues with Vieira and Hrothgar, I do think that one of the things that I have loved from it is not only that I do genuinely love those races, but that the like facial textures, the facial structures, the even cosmetic options, the hairstyles that they do have for them that are unique, all of those I genuinely think are beautiful. Like, and so much better even than the base races that we have in the game,
Yeah, very true as an Ellison player, yep.
Yes, like I genuinely love that. And it does give me great hope for them finishing out these races and for a possible future in which we see more character creator updates overall to the system. Because this is a team that really can do beautiful things. And while there was a huge misstep with the realization of these races, and something that I think, while many people absolutely love them, and I do love them, right? It has caused problems for players. It has made it so that players became disheartened about these races or felt really weird, or, new players had weird stumbling blocks where they were like, what do you mean? Why can't I put any hats on? I just Fantasia to this other race, right?
Yeah.
Like, those things weren't great, but the actual races themselves are beautiful. And I really like a lot of their textures and their faces, and it makes me so hopeful for what we can see, even based off of the unique NPC models that we've gotten, for possible future expansions and updates to the character creator, because I think the team has learned a lot and they've really finessed, and with additional stuff like lighting and, them taking a look at third-party tools and or certain mods that might also have different cosmetics, and what other games are doing right now that they can offer cosmetically. I hope that they keep building on it and we see them expand some more of that to other races even, and continue to expand these races.
Yep. So yeah, that was that. We're just leave it there. Everybody knows. Everybody knows what our thoughts on that.
We're putting away our claws.
Right. So let's move on. We talked a little bit about just kind of our initial impressions of the first already.
That's so cool.
It's cool. It's all purpley, and then there was that one guy, and we're like, "Hey, you look like the one guy," and then he died. And we're like, "Oh,
Well, the characters did some cool
that's
stuff.
bad." And then there was like this dude in the hood, and he's like, "Hi, I know you."
Oriange tricked fairies. That was hilarious. It was good.
The regions are so cool. I love how they interpret familiar but unfamiliar landscapes. I mean,
Yes.
Ilmeg is so cool. The fairy, the Celtic sort of Gaelic mythology that's there. When we look at pixies that we have on the source, I really like how they decided to kind of innovate that, change that, do something different. The dwarves. I love the dwarves on the first. I think the first is such a rich setting. Aldino, I know why you fell in love with it, right? But to have this concept of what actually delineates a beast tribe, as the outdated term was still, and the spoken races. And when it comes down to it, I think this was a first big step in kind of re-envisioning that. And the fact that they even put in the little like Lalafell specific houses you can only go in, and like I thought that was all so charming. I loved it. I think the only zone that kind of, I just wish we had more with it, is like Amarang.
I knew it was coming.
That zone didn't really do it for me. I like a lot of the visuals. I like that flood of light area, but
How did
realized
we not have a dungeon in like the big like ruin in Amarang? They're like, let's go down this literal hole for a dungeon, but we're not like doing anything with like the wall of light or like the thing where Minfilia was. Like that seems like a huge missed opportunity. Like
I get why we didn't go into the wall of light, but it would have been so cool to just have a small area where you could just walk around.
They did Minfilia dirty in that expansion.
I mean, that's fine, but
no, it's she was an important part of it, and she did have some moments, but then like you have that part in 5.3 when they're getting ready to go back to the source. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go like lay some flowers down for Minfilia and stuff, and that was it. That's, you don't even like see it or anything. Like that could have been a really good moment, and they just.
I hope it comes back. I hope it comes back around. Like. Okay. I'll live without it, but it would have been nice to have seen. And like I said, I hope they come back around to it when we see Reen again, because it's not like she's just going on a shelf for forever.
Yeah, they'll be back.
They locked a Catboy in a tower. He did not go on a shelf for forever. Reen is gonna come back, so I just kind of hope that they throw back to that, and they didn't fill it in so that they had a little wiggle room.
I mean, the history of Minfilia's on the first is so just impactful, and how many were there? How many died, right? Before Yomor gave up, how many died, right? We don't actually know the number because they died young, and it had been about 100 years. So like that is some bleak, interesting world building that they could use to show Minfilia.
I think they could do a really cool side quest series with that. And explore that. I think that would be really cool.
I agree. The Sin Eaters too. We haven't even talked about Sin Eaters and Sin Eater aesthetic with the first.
Oh no!
I mean,
Tesleen.
So sorry. No. Well, Tesleen. But the thing that I should have thought of, the thing that stuck with me the most from Shadowbringers. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No, go.
When you beat the first Sin Eater and you go outside and you see all these people who've never seen the night sky, seeing it for the first time ever, that was just so chilling in just an amazing way.
Yeah, the skybox stuff that they did in Shadowbringers was a massive step forward for their technology and immersion. We saw it come back in Endwalker, and it really, really does. You're right, Zed. I'm so glad you brought that up. It hits you. And I mean, we also saw a whole new wave of inspiration with things like the Sin Eater aesthetic from, everybody doing their Sin Eater AU, like, and everything. And I think that also recontextualized the Void Sense and everything that we kind of see with their distinctive styling later on down the road. Now, as we get even more into it post Endwalker, I really loved seeing that, and that still just stands out to me on the first. That formula with like uncovering the Light Wardens and the consumption of their power, and that point when you reach your breaking point, and the stuff that they did with the special effects for like Tesleen's transformation and all of that kind of stuff. That all is such a huge part of the first to me. And I feel like the way that they explored, just like you pointed out, Aldino, that bleak setting, a world in which the end has already come. And then we get with Endwalker, right? A world that's about to end, and you almost know more about the stakes and everything else. And then we get with everything that looks like moving on, a world that is so far gone, there is no saving it. And I love this progression and this examination and this subversion of what we expect from a hero trope, right? There are places where maybe we were too late, or places where we were just in the nick of time, and I think that is such a cool thing to explore, and it feels so tied to the first for me as well.
Yeah, it makes me think, because we've done the first, like we've gone through the expansion, and then you look at Endwalker and you look at how the source dealt with despair. And it makes me think, and I would love to know, what the dev team's thoughts are on that. If despair came to the first, would it matter? Like, those people have gone through so much. Would it be a whole different type of scenario? You know what I mean? Especially now after the night is back. To me, the people of the first are the most resilient that we've ever seen. Period. Yeah. There's no one who embodies the spirit of the ancients more than the first, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I love it. Like, yes.
You're making me cry right now.
Right. It's just, they had nothing and they were lost and they were going to just be merged in, right? But they kept going. And it's crazy to think that. And, you look at Eorzea and you go, yeah, some of those places would be fine, but some of those places, that's the first time they've encountered something like this, and the first is just hardened to all that.
And even with that, they are hardened, but we basically gave them hope again too.
Yes,
so now that they got, it's like they got that little taste, they're not letting go of that anytime soon.
Ever again.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and Ozma brings up a good point in chat, which is that definitely the Crystarium feels that. I mean, of course, there are different areas where I think they have processed it, but I agree with you in that they are not. Even, I think, the people of Yulmore, with the exception of perhaps those who are gathered outside the city, even the people of Yulmore, right? They have almost shirked despair in favor of gluttony and these other, these other things, indulgence.
Fuck it, we gonna die anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They were hedonists,
Yeah, and it's also
pursuit of pleasure. Yeah,
it's also partially why I get so mad anytime Grahati is like, I'm like nothing, but
exactly.
I'm like, you just, I don't know, brought a whole world back from the brink and traveled through time and tried to save our world and save us and everybody else. Like, you shut your beautiful little mouth.
He took so much on. He does all this stuff for the place where he's from, and he almost accidentally ends up in this other place. It's like, well, I guess I can help them too. And just like, little boy, you're so good. You're so good.
Yeah, bringing the hope to them. Because, it was the hope from the people who were left on the source that transported to the first and kickstarted them because of the Crystal Tower, So.
Yeah. It's like, well, I got this big tower here, not really using all of it. It's kind of decorative. You can have pieces of it to like build a city for yourself. That's fine.
Yeah.
Little boy.
It's amazing.
One of the things too I wanted to mention, we talked about the tech behind, the skybox and changing it from nighttime to nighttime and then daytime and stuff. That was also a real big aid to them with their cinematics team doing cutscenes, because right now in the game you can go do a cutscene or whatever and it'll just play like whatever time of day it is. So like, oh wow, this cutscene maybe doesn't look that great at 11 p.m. when it's dark outside. But with Shadowbringers, because the way that it was written, all of the major MSQ stuff, they knew what that skybox would be, they knew what the lighting would be, and they could plan accordingly. And I think that also kind of helped. Yeah, with their storytelling and that. Segueing off of that, like how I brought that in. Whoosh,
hey, you like something in this like a lot, right? What's that thing?
There's some good stuff in here. The Amarot reveal. I love Square Enix. I love the team that's working on this game. I don't think they're ever gonna top this for me. Like this is like my number one favorite thing in 14 is when you do the little mazy bits through the things, and then you come out and it's just like, hey, here's a whole ass city, and it's where the ancients used to live, and you're like, what? It blew my mind.
Also,
I think, go ahead.
It's a freaking memory that someone who was sad that all of their friends and family were gone created.
The whole
just out of his butt.
It's why, like, the idea that you're like, oh, maybe we'll get a little look at like Emet-Selch and what's going on there, and it's just like this
ruins,
entire underwater city, and then you go through it and you get a little taste of like what their civilization was, and then you go through.
Let me tell you about my best friend.
And then you do the dungeon, and it's the final days of Amarot, and it's just like kicking you in the butt the whole time while slapping you in the face and making you feel feelings. And then you fight Hades, and then when it's all said and done, you're on this you're like on the roof of this tall building, and you look around and it's all ruins.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh.
Yep. It literally destroyed the ending of Stormblood. Just completely.
Oh my god.
And, Endwalker, depending on how you feel about everything up to it, builds on top of that. Now, it depends on, who you are. But, like, that first moment in Shadowbringers where they nailed the landing, I was like, it doesn't even matter from now on, honestly, if they nail it next time. Because this is the one that I will remember,
Yeah. I mean, it's this, and and we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think for me, Endwalker was okay. Like, it had some okay moments. It had some things I didn't agree with, which is fine. I think for me, just as a whole, Shadowbringers is the golden expansion. Like the golden era of 14. Like a lot of stuff felt balanced really well. The story was phenomenal. They had new systems in place that was amazing for accessibility with trusts. They nailed everything in this expansion with the exception of races. Like, it was just so much was like not good, great with Shadowbringers. And it's just I obviously it's like the same team that's still working on this game, but I'd love for them to top this. I don't know if they can, because it really was. We give Stormblood a lot of flack, but at the time we were like, okay, yeah, this is fine. But then Shadowbringers rose that bar so damn high that I'll be really curious to see if they can ever recreate, half of the vibes that Shadowbringers gave us.
It's interesting to me because, okay, I loved Endwalker. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have plenty of discussion and critiques and points and all sorts of things about Endwalker. You all have heard, I'm sure. But Endwalker, I do think emotionally hit me even harder than Shadowbringers did.
That's fair. Yeah.
But Shadowbringers, I think, is an impeccably constructed story in many ways. And the thing is that I don't know. I'm not really looking for them to top it. I think, Aldino, I'm kind of with you in that I think you can really only have a massive world-altering plot twist like once.
That's fair.
In such a way that the novelty, the surprise, the expectation, everything, right? Like, even if they have amazing twists for us down the road, which I'm sure they will, nothing will beat that first time that you feel the whole world flip on its head. And that was definitely this zone. I did not see it coming. I figured we'd get more about whatever backstory or things like that. But I even remember when I got to that last zone, I was kind of underwhelmed. Like, the music is there and it's sort of sparse. And I'm like, oh, cool. I guess we're in the ocean. And, you kind of see these mysterious sort of ruins and things. But, I was going, this is kind of weird when you look at some of the other final zones that we've had. I guess maybe not. Again, we talked a little bit about the locks and stuff. And like, it was okay. But I mean, I was like, I don't know if I really think that this is like the final zone feeling that I normally get. But I was like, it's fine, cool. Yeah, I guess we'll go down in the ocean. And I like a lot of these plants and things. But when you hit that point, I mean, I will never forget that until the day that I die. I will never forget that moment in that game, like where you come through and the music comes together and that clock that you've heard in the background and the realization that like you are in the ghosts of a civilization you never conceived of. Like, it's so interesting to me because so like Doctor Who, for those of you who are familiar, I personally was not a huge fan of Moffat's seasons. Some people loved them, some people hated them. I leaned more towards not really liking, although I liked a lot of his characters. But he did this one thing with a character, Rory, where he it's very convoluted, so I'm going to try and explain it the best I can. For the woman that he loves, he is back in time and he becomes like a robot. And then he for millennia upon millennia, does this, continues on and lives on and does all this stuff to make sure that one day he can save her and all this stuff, right? And it felt very reminiscent to that to me. And the community around Doctor Who largely praised him as a character because of this. Can you believe he weathered millennia upon a millennia trying to fight for this woman that he loves and suffering all these horrible things and putting himself back together and I had this moment with Emet-Selch where I'd already come to really love him. But it's incredible to me, that fine line between the hero and the villain, right? And it's not always pulled off super well and super convincingly. But for me with him, there are a lot of truly unforgivable things that he did. But when you think about the fact that for his people, he was the hero that continued on to fight for them, that it took a sense of unshakable resolve that eventually became, I think, the only thing he had left. That for all of his flippant behavior and all these other things, you walk amidst a recreation. And he's claiming that he did it to set the stage for his big dramatic thing and all this stuff, right? But in reality, I mean, it's like he's trapped in his own memories. He's trapped in the thing. He's holding on however he can to his grief, what he's lost, to try and bring it back no matter what. And oh my God, that whole area is just so absolutely incredible. It's immersive, emotional storytelling. When we start learning our own connections to it, it's just even more brilliant. When you think about the sheer power at his disposal, it's so impressive. When you meet these characters that eventually, when we look now at Endwalker and, Hythlodaeus and everything else, and you realize that you yourself, in a sense, were once a part of this world, it is just... It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
They do such a thorough job of making it very apparent how he feels about what he's been doing all of this time, what his reasons are. I like to think that anyway. It's they make you not hate him for it. They make you not hate him for wanting to get rid of you, and that's hard.
It's wild, right? Yeah. I mean, I had that.
They make you understand his view. He's living in his house and we are all ants and he doesn't want ants in his house. He wants a clean house. Get rid of us. And you understand it.
Yeah.
You can appreciate it in kind of a twisted way. And I also wanted to say about Amarot, you guys are saying, oh, it's this time when it was flip-flopped. And the reveal itself did not do that for me. Partially because I opened up a link shell and saw somebody in the dungeon Amarot. And I was like, oh, that's a place I'm going. I am spoiled. Hell. So that didn't quite have it right at the reveal for me, but just through Emet-Selch, I definitely still got that feeling. So I would say it's not even the city itself and the reveal so much as what the city means, why it's there.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I remember playing through Shadowbringers and it was really late at night. I just got into the Tempest and I'm looking around. I'm like, all right, underwater, music's okay. It's no Az's Law, but whatever. And logging in the next day and go through, I'm like, Sahagin, all right, what, you gotta have something to do down here. And then it's there's some weird blurry lights. I'm like, all right, they're let's find out what these are. And you go through and you go off that little ridge. And people, a lot of people described it as Shadowbringers went full Kingdom Hearts. But I
disagree. But that's
it's a modern city. That's going full Kingdom Hearts apparently.
Yeah.
Can I really nerdy for a second?
Okay.
Just now?
Okay, but only if you do it in the correct nerd voice.
No, I can't.
Woman who has two Emet-Selch plushies is just now getting nerdy.
Let me break it down for you guys, okay?
Okay. So I've mentioned this before, and it's one of my favorite things ever, and I honestly think it's one of the reasons that I love Emet-Selch so much. So Shakespeare, The Tempest. In Shakespeare the Tempest, we have a man who has lost everything, who is a sorcerer, right? And he gets exiled to this island. And on the island, he weaves these spells, these magics, these festivities. And one of the only people, he's also kind of racist. I'm just gonna be honest. Like the Tempest has some problems, but all of that aside, I mean, I think actually it kind of encapsulates even things with Emet-Selch, right?
It does, yeah.
which is kind of staggering. Like, he's not a good man. He like menaces and attacks this like native guy on the island, and he hates him, and he's really terrible to him, Caliban. And at the same time, though, he makes these pacts with spirits, and his daughter that was exiled to the island with him, he obviously cares very deeply for. And although he has like, you know, been sent to this island in disgrace, and he's like concocting his evil revenge, right? He eventually, like, some sailors get shipwrecked on the island. His daughter falls in love with one of them, and he realizes ultimately that his daughter's happiness and future is more important to him than his own machinations for revenge. And he is old, and he's like reaching the end of his life, and he is looking back. And one of my absolute favorite pieces from this play is the final soliloquy, which he does typically with everyone else gone, alone, directly addressing the audience, because he is acknowledging them and the role that they've played in it. And if I can get really nerdy, I really want to read it. It's not long.
Just now you're getting nerdy? After already asking to be nerdy, you're getting nerdier?
Well,
this is like Inception. It's like nerdy and nerdy and nerdy. Like, how?
This means so much to me because they actually, in a short story with Emet-Selch, have him quote this. And I performed this role in a gender-bent version. And to this day, it is still a soliloquy that like makes me tear up, because the idea was that it was also possibly Shakespeare himself, because this was the last play that he wrote, acknowledging that he himself would soon be leaving the stage and that he would die. And those final moments with him, where you have the whole like Ardbert thing and everything that leads up into it, and then he has this moment where, you know, you're standing in the ruins of the city and he has finally made peace and been set free. I feel like is almost beat by beat an actual evocation of this soliloquy. So if you all don't mind, can I read it really fast?
Go for it. Full nerd. Let's go.
So he says, "Now my charms are all overthrown, and what strength I have's mine own, which is most faint. Now 'tis true, I must be here confined by you or sent to Naples." He's been confronted essentially with like, he's saying like, I either, like, the play goes on or the lights go down and you all leave, is essentially kind of the idea here, the translation. And theoretically, he's sort of saying, you know, if you don't leave, I will be stuck here forever. Like, if you don't say farewell and if we don't end this, I will be stuck here forever. Otherwise, if you do leave, theoretically, my story finds peace and resolution, right? Okay, so he says, "I must be here confined by you or sent to Naples. Let me not, since I have my dukedom got and pardoned the deceiver, dwell in this bare island by your spell, but release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. Gentle breath of yours my sails must fill, or else my project fails, which was to please. Now I want spirits to enforce, art to enchant, and my ending is despair, unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself and frees all faults. As you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free." And but when you think, like, honestly, it's so beautiful. Sorry, everybody. Like, I honestly get so emotional about it, because it is that moment with him, and they quote these words with him later as well, that Prospero, in his final moments before his life ends, acknowledges that he himself was flawed, and that he himself did so many things so wrong in his life. He begs your mercy. He begs that you let it end, and that through that he might find some kind of reconciliation, be freed from the things that have imprisoned him and that have made it so that he couldn't let go of his life. He couldn't let go of vengeance. and that through that he finds his own peace and resolution. And I think the way that 14 sometimes does things that have been memorialized as some of the most phenomenal literature in the world and playwriting that the world has ever seen, right? There's a reason Shakespeare is so powerful. But the way that 14 draws on other sources and then layers them in and creates this narrative that is timeless is phenomenal. To hear those words echoed through this expansion, through Emet-Selch as a character, there's so much you can dive into. It made that moment, and that, I don't know, the whole parallel, the Tempest itself is a reference to these plays and to this play itself. And I just think that there is something to me that hit me so extra hard at the ending because of the very purposeful way that they built this moment.
I mean, you could delve into it so deeply. I mean, in speaking of spirits that he made his cloak out of, the other Asians that were keeping him there, was he begging them for their indulgence? Like, it's just,
and even
you can go insane.
Yeah, I mean, and on the other side of that
think
too,
about the Hades fight, they're literally in his cloak.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many.
We have all the Shakespeare ties too, but then there's also all the ties and references to like Utopia.
Yeah,
right.
Utopia
It's that
as well.
idea of like I think that like right in if I was like writing this thing, I would think that a lot of the names of these areas and stuff would have come from Emet-Selch's mind, right? The idea of this was my world, it was perfect, right? And I just they draw a lot of good literary things just from all over for this, and it just worked so well. I mean, again, right? We see Solace at the end of Stormblood, and like, this guy, whatever, like, this is lame. But then, like, as Shadowbringers progresses, you're like, all right, he's kind of interesting. And then at the end, I just want to wrap an arm around him and go, oh, buddy. Like, it's to be able to pull that off successfully is incredible. I wish they could have done that with Xenos and Endwalker for me. Because Shadowbringers just, they took a character I was like, and it just, like, he's one of the best characters in the game now. But yeah, but that's base 5.0. We also had with the expansion, we had Ishgardian Restoration. They revamped Diadem again.
Again.
For the third time. And it worked this time. I thought it was really great. I mean, eventually too, we got ocean fishing. They really did some cool stuff, I think, to ease the leveling of gatherers. With 5.0, they gave them like crazy relic weapons to work towards, like where they're like glowing and like fancy effects and stuff. That was really cool.
Talking about Diadem really quick, even amongst the like firmament leveling, like all of the rankings people against each other, Diadem was such a like wholesome place where people would just hang out and talk to each other and spend days together gathering crap.
It was really cool content. I mean, you know, the first big thing, like, you know, we had 1.0, we had content for gatherers and crafters in 1.0, rip Hamlet. And then 2.0 came out and they're like, we have crafters and gatherers and they can do leaves. And then Heaven's Word was like scripts. And it's like, oh, okay, so a little bit more. And then in Shadowbringers, it's like, here's like this really cool stuff just for you guys. We're giving you relic weapons to work towards. And so I thought that was really cool. I loved the way that they implemented it. I liked that Diadem felt like maybe it was finally something stable.
Chat's giving me shit for calling Diadem wholesome. I just mean there was camaraderie there. Yes, there was shit posting and a lot of just absolutely horny people, but it was no talking to each other. I mean, having a good time together.
They were playing Final Fantasy XIV. That's just par for the course.
Yeah.
I mean, the other end of that, we also had the area for puns. We had Eureka. That was an interesting thing because they pitched it at FanFest. They're like, if people liked the way that 11 was in certain regards, then maybe you'll like this. And so a lot of people that did play 11 are like, okay. And then some people are like, this is going to end terribly because that game and its mechanics have not aged as well as you think they have. And it wasn't the greatest thing, but what it did offer was a area
Go ahead.
Okay. What it did offer was an area where you could get some different actions and play around a little bit of a playground, but it was also not easy. It upped the challenge a little bit. You know, you had to walk a lot and sneak around things, right? So I think it pulled in some good aspects of 11, maybe some not so great aspects of 11. But for a long time in Shadowbringers, especially we derped this. It's Bozja.
That's why I was like, wait.
No, I'm derping because the outline says Bozja Eureka 2.0. I'm derping so hard right now. Oh my
I had a
God.
moment.
I was like, maybe I just misheard him and he means Bozja.
No, I'm just it's that COVID brain coming back to get me.
No, but it's a good foundation for talking about Bozja because it's the better Eureka.
It is the better Eureka, and I mean, and it's the same. It's going to end up being a very similar conversation that I was already having towards the end of this expansion, right in the patch cycle. That's almost all I was doing. I would log in and I would just do that content, and you know, after actual Eureka and like getting like 3 relics done, be like, oh my God, this is terrible. Why would I ever do? I ended up getting like 5 or 6 out of Bozja. Like, what the hell is wrong with me?
What is funny to me though is that while Bozja, and I remember I was actually a part of the team at this point because I remember us talking about Bozja live in one of our reviews with the content, and for all that, I absolutely agree. There were a lot of incredibly clear-cut improvements in the formula from Eureka. Many things that they addressed, many things that they went through and fixed. It has been very fascinating to me to see, though, that it does not have nearly as much longevity as Eureka has. I still actively and avidly see groups that are running Eureka, in Eureka, putting together things for stuff like the Baldesion Arsenal. And Bozja, in comparison, I feel like I even played it less. I don't know. I did not quite hook into it as much, although I really love a lot of the changes. I love a lot of the things, those solo duels, the fates, so many other things.
There were parts about it that were more involved, like the solo duels, but overall I would say it was less all-encompassing and requiring as much of your time. Like, there were only 2 zones instead of 4.
And they were pretty small, and they were pretty empty. They weren't that hard to navigate, which was good in some cases and bad in others. And the actual content from it, while very cool, and I still love the content that they made for that because they did so many innovative things. I think there are so many ideas in there that they could even integrate into open world zones or into future content or into...
You got things like a Delibrum instead, the like big long dungeon in between, and honestly, I prefer that. I think that was a cooler way to go.
I think
more fun.
I mean, and the way that it worked, right, with Eureka, we had 4 zones, and then we had the Arsenal, and the way it was like, it's like you go into it, and there's like the little pop up. This is the hardest content you will ever do, and we just want to make sure you're okay with that. Okay, like. But then with Bozja, they're like, all right, we're gonna take that idea, but then like make it accessible to like normal players. Which yes, and then we did get Delibrum Savage, which is cool. But I think I love that idea of having something a little more accessible to like the average player,
right?
And it you know, I think to some extent, right, with Bozja, like you get what you put into it, right? Because there is a lot of stuff you can get from it. There's like a hairstyle and a mount from doing the
oh my gosh, the hairstyle.
what's the
field notes?
The second encounter, the second like dungeon thing. The Dalriada.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Dalriada, okay.
So like there's you can get a hairstyle from that. I think you can was the hairstyle?
It's from Delibrum. From Delibrum.
Well, I'm trying to think because there's the hairstyle of the one dude. There's the gold robot mount. I think that's is that Castrum or Del? They're blurring together for me. But yeah, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff like, and the drop rates are garbage. So like, one. You could sell it. So
are we talking about the like robot or like the flying jet robot?
The flying jet robot. Okay. Yeah.
Because there's also like the robot that was
the stomping boy. you could easily grind the stuff, and then you had the field notes too, right? And you finish those, and you get the air bike from 12, which is really cool. That thing took me forever, but I finally got it. I was like, yeah,
that one was hard.
Yeah, that was a
I
pain in the
loved the
ass.
field notes though. I
Yeah.
loved adding that kind of lore in, and there was so much in there that was so good.
It was
So good.
It was their test for like the Unending Codex, I think.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
really, people really loved it. I mean, I don't do this sort of alt content. I am 100% a raid logger. If you don't know what that is, I log into raid and then I log out. That's kind of the way that I interact with MMOs usually after the story is over. But Boja got me to go in and get the field note to an extent. I think I have like 2, and the drop rate was just so low that I was like, whatever, I don't care anymore. But the field notes were super compelling, and we'll never get an ending.
That
we might, maybe.
That
hope we do.
That was such
Game's
a bummer.
not down yet.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And I think that's like if the races were like the worst part of Shadowbringers, I think the ending of this Evilise content was probably the second worst thing, because you get these field notes.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
No, Fusion, incorrect, because you are forgetting that the NieR raids are in this
Oh
expansion.
shit! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Races, NieR raid, and then the ending for Evilise.
NieR raid story.
NieR raid story.
Okay. And we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, it's just like you get some field notes, and it's like some stuff happened, and like this guy's dead, and you're just like, what? Like as like you go through this stuff for the story, and you get these really cool cutscenes, and you get to see all this stuff, and then it's just like in a random note, and blah 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 blah, and it's like what? And then Matsuno's like, yeah, so we're done, and it's like, the fuck you are? Like, no, what do you mean? What do you mean you're done?
I know. And the story was so good. Like, I genuinely loved, but it was so sparse, and it was so like 90% of your cutscenes were just you crouching to put the dumb thing in the ground. And then you get this actually incredibly lore-rich, fascinating
we had
region.
Fran was in it. That was cool.
It was so good. And like the Garlean experimentation and all the other stuff in this area and everything, the history, the relics, it was so good. So good. And yet
that freaking NPC with the sunglasses, like why does she have sunglasses? Why?
I kind of ended up liking her weird.
I like her, but why the sunglasses?
Yo, she did that summer event, and she really liked the reward.
Just like, what? Okay.
Yeah. It just felt like they really wanted to do something with, like, I don't know, evoking a bit of her. Yeah, random button, or like evoking modern Japanese like pop culture for teen kind of thing. I've got like that kind of sense from it. I don't really know like 100%. I mean, I am bitter still that we didn't actually get to see a Femme Hrothgar be the queen, which she should have been, and that they made the hot Femru once again the villain. But and the only other thing is, I think actually we probably would still see a lot more longevity of that content. I like the Cerberus mount, but it's so out of left field for being the reward for this.
It makes no sense in that setting. Like,
it makes
I remember when it came out.
Well,
at least
that's one of the things you fight in the field, though.
Yeah, but
I guess, but like
at least with BA, it's Ozma, and you're like, yeah, we fought Ozma.
Yeah, and it's like the Ozma mount is transformative and has this unique special effect and has all this thing, and it's a part of the actual raid. I don't know why they didn't do the Queen's Chair as the mount for that, because to me that feels like you could have had some cool special action stuff on it. Like, it's very strange to me that
that's
that
a missed
wasn't
opportunity.
The mount. Yeah, but
I mean, I like it. It just should have come from somewhere else.
It's one of those things like the glowy armor this time around. It's for some people, it's not for some other people.
Yeah, no, I mean it's I'm still for it. I just think they should have put it somewhere else. Like, I want the mount. It doesn't make sense with Boja, I don't think, to me at least.
Yeah, it was a little strange. And I also don't think people, and totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't get a general sense of the same level of excitement for the evolutions of the relic weapons in Shadowbringers.
Oh, we got to chat Cerberus because Tartarus.
I mean, I get that, but we don't. And we had the Diablo armament, but it's like, yeah, that was a
we didn't really full on Tartarus here, though.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I think to an extent, like it was similar enough to Eureka that I think maybe people that remembered Eureka for all the bad reasons, right? All the stealthing, and it just took forever. I think a lot of that when they said, hey, here's Boja and here's kind of what we're doing, I think a lot of people were like, you know what, I'm good. Like, I wasn't crazy about Eureka. I'm just gonna pass on this. And I mean, I get it. I can understand that. But then there's also crazy people that are like, I'm just gonna grind relics, and that's literally my gameplay from 4.4 to the next expansion come out. That's all there is left for me to do. But yeah, I thought it was good. I loved it, and we had the quest leading up to it too, with like the actual Boja Citadel incident. Like that was coming in fourth place. Worst thing about Shadowbringers, the golden expansion pack. I forget that the EX fight against Varus or Solus or whoever the hell it was.
Oh yeah,
where you got the glamored AF or the diable AF. That was dumb. I'm
glad
they didn't do that
fine.
again. No, that was dumb.
The fight was fine. In the sense that I think, especially if you had a static and things, it was very handily learnable and repeatable.
Sure.
But I do think that long term, it was not a good move for the Diable artifact set because, like, oh my God, I need to get a group to do that now. It's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And as we saw with the shift to Endwalker, putting that Diable version in like a tier thing that's just readily accessible.
They heard us and they're like, all right, just have it. And that
felt so much better.
So good.
However, takeaways from Boja, because we've talked a bit about some of the other critiques and things. Takeaways from Boja that I thought were really good. I thought there was an incredible imagination and like the way that they went in and offered some additional endgame style content with the normal and then savage mode. Even like the music and setting was so fantastic. Those concepts and ideas about the things like the duels, some of the NMs were so fun. The way that you would get like you could queue in and then instance into like the little, fight arena, but people could still see you doing it. All of those things I thought were such good takeaways. And there was a lot, even with just the special action system and things that they improved so drastically from Eureka. And I think that it brought something new and interesting into the game. I don't want to see them completely abandon this style of content because I do think a wide variety of content is important. And I think they did a lot that was innovative in this, but figuring out how to tie it in to keep refining it and streamlining it, but keep it interesting and make it, I think, just a little bit easier for people to queue into stuff for it and stuff.
I think the hardest thing with this content, and it's great, I would love to see more stuff like this, but the problem is relevancy over time. Because right now, like, yeah, you can go into Eureka, you can do Baldessing Arsenal, but you have to, that's a lot of planning. You need to do a lot of stuff to get a group to do that. You can go into Boja or Zadnor and try and farm field notes, but I honestly, I don't know how many people are still doing it because there's not really an incentive to do it right now. Maybe if you really want like an old, the older relic like weapon models or something, but right now in Endwalker, there's no reason to go back and do that content. And I don't know what the solution is. I if they can figure this out, like, more power to them. But that's also not to say that that's not a reason to not do more of this kind of content in the future as well. Because, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, right? Is people, you have content, new content comes out, you do the new content. But yeah, I thought it was good. Some people don't like the grind. Some people don't like necessarily having to fiddle with like the extra abilities and spells and that kind of stuff, and I get that, but yeah,
it's better than Eureka. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Story was cool until they ended it in a fucking field note. Also with this expansion we had the Eden raids, which were
were tiny little treasures hidden amongst the story.
Oh,
yeah.
They were all a little disappointing, but the stuff we did get out of it that was worthwhile was very worthwhile.
I think the way that I would pitch it is the way that the storyline of Eden went. I think it should have been more ingrained with the MSQ, because there were some big drops in there, and to have it kind of on the side like that is a little bit of a bummer. But I mean, again, I think part of the problem too that a lot of these kind of side things suffer from in Shadowbringers is you're on this whole other shard.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I've been playing on this shard for 8 years. I have a general idea of everything. We're on a completely new shard. Everything is new. The lore the history is completely different. And so it all kind of intertwined, but you have to really do everything. And so it would have been nice to see that weaved in a little bit more. But yeah,
it was nice that they did at all, because up until that point we were always like, hey, it'd be really super cool if the raids had anything to do with the MSQ.
Which is
this time they did. Yeah. It was pretty cool. But it was like they'd written out the story, thrown the pages in the air, let them fall down, and picked them back up without reordering them. And that's the story.
Yeah, and I mean, there are really memorable moments from that raid, and I love Rita Gaia, and I would die for them. I mean, I think their connection and their story was some of the most beautiful takeaway that I had from that, and I was a little divided about the fights. I mean, I enjoyed them, but they definitely aren't some of the ones that when I think back on the endgame content that I've really enjoyed, even if it was hard, they're not the ones that I'm like, yeah, I would love to do that for another 10 years, you know?
Yeah,
like
each 12,
never again on this one.
E12 normal is the most boring fight. Because they and look, I get it, right? You know, and I've said it before.
12 Savage is a big pain in the booty butt.
Well, right, but with the normal mode, like, they have to experiment, right? They have to try new things, right, to make the game experience more exciting for people. But that narrative bit in the middle of that fight was just like, oh my god, it was awful. It just slowed the pace down. Yeah. But there were also some really cool things.
Yeah, I love the idea of the remixed primals, you know, like that's cool. Using what we learned about it. I love everything to do with learning more about the Flood of Light and the Shadow Keeper. And, you know, there was a recent question on the Q&A like, hey, you know, Void, huh? Weren't there some quests on the first about the Void? And they went, yeah, but we don't want to make that mandatory. They'll show up, don't worry, but it won't be all that much. And I'm like, but you're like, the thing that made people who didn't like Shadowbringers not like it is because it was on another shard, right? And it doesn't matter to them. They think, okay,
a lot of us had that reaction, right? Coming out of the Japanese fan fest, it was like, it's actually the first, and we're like, we have all this part of like the rest of the world that we're on that we haven't touched yet. Why the hell are we going over here?
What they could do to tie it back in is the Shadow Keeper and the Void quests, and to make that important, and they can, but it won't be the driver of the MSQ, and that's good and it's bad. I disagree with it, but we'll see what they do, because they're never going to let a thread completely
and now
drop.
and now we're finally starting to get into the Void a little. It feels like there was genuinely like a little bit of a misstep, because when we had 6.1, they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna like poke a familiar into the Void, and it's like, we did this already. Yeah, but that was heavily gate kept, so we need to make it accessible, and we're gonna put it over here.
Yeah, the thing though for me is like, why even use or keep around those characters if you really aren't just going to do anything with them, right? Anukalai stayed there getting updated dialogue for ages. We have this like those characters are massively important. So I do hope that even if they just do something where like in a future expansion they do show up and they're like, oh hey, it turned out we were this in case you forgot, and we're here now because we found a way. I mean, they could easily do something like that and not make it mandatory that you do all of the role quests, or they could also just easily ease the role quest restriction for it.
They should have structured those differently. I mean, Unukalhai like has been around for so long. I would even argue like post Crystal Exarch or you know, pre-Crystal Exarch, right? Like Unukalhai was probably more important in the narrative and the kind of intrinsic like lore of what was going on than Grahatia was. And they just kind of throw him off into this gate kept, like, that was a mistake.
And now we have a whole other thing where spoilers, although we've been talking spoilers this whole time. So we have this whole other thing where Zero believes that we believe that perhaps Zero was the last of the heroes that you know what I mean? But we have other heroes that escaped. So do Anukalai and Ciela know who Zero was originally before the corruption? Do they know each other? You would think
we need to go on a trip.
So
it's so bizarre that you have basically two groups of people working towards the same thing, and they're not like they're staying in their own lanes because they can't interact because of the way that they created those void quests based off of the role quests, and it's just like, it's a bummer.
And it ties together two technically optional things, and the Warring Triad, which is technically, I mean, you didn't have to really get too deep into it, and then the void quests, and you're like, oh man, Unokalahai is so screwed. He's behind two optional content. But then again, Crystal Tower was optional. No,
and I mean, and during the 14-hour broadcast too, I think they talked about this a little bit, because they during the live letter they had this kind of interview with this scenario group talking about these role quests, right, and how the warriors were kind of based off of like the archangels from 11, which is like, I was like, heck yeah, like, which I hadn't really thought about until they like showed that slide. I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
Except for like the Lalafell Black Mage. Excuse me. What are they called? Tarutaru.
Tarutaru.
Yeah, Tarutaru.
And they're, the way that they talked about it, I think Ichikawa mentioned, they don't want to put anything too crazy like behind.
He grew up.
They don't want to like basically like put MSQ stuff behind things like the void quests and stuff. And I'm like, I agree, but you shouldn't put the story behind locked content like that. I think they need to like have role quests and stuff, right? Whatever. Like the way that they handled it,
I kind of get it, to be honest.
Has been weird.
I agree. I agree that this stuff is so rich and should be readily available to everyone, but it made it so much more satisfying to actually level those jobs and do those quests, put the effort in. And if they give you a different story for those role quests, it's going to be hard to match something of that caliber and again have it be something
that's fair
that people aren't mad that they don't get to see again.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think they ended up having a double dip narratively with some of the early Void stuff in Endwalker, and it's a bummer because they had all this really good stuff that they couldn't use because of the way.
Like, you're looking at the other side, and it's like, are we doing this again?
It's like it's like every few years when like two movies come out and they're like really similar. It's like, oh, this used to be the same movie, and then some writers moved over and the studio adapted some stuff. And
conversely, though, it did give a unique reward to players who did all of those quests because we weren't even sure if it was actual foreshadowing of things to come, and it turns out it 100% was. So
just
if you
not
did them
with
at
them.
the time. Well, I mean, maybe with them, but I mean, it's one of those things where, like, yes, I think it is kind of weird that they've done a redundant thing on it, but I mean, technically, you did get foreshadowing of post Endwalker if you did those and you put the time in and you did all the bonus quests, which I do think is a special reward, right? That you could have this on your horizon and have an idea.
It was a slightly different experiment. It was a dragon scale testing experiment.
There you go. Yeah. Also, the other raid.
Here we go.
People were so
NieR
excited
Fire,
when they announced
wherever
a
you are.
NieR collaboration with Yoko Taro. For me, NieR. Look, I will acknowledge there's a lot of people out there that love NieR. They love NieR Automata. They love Drakengard. Awesome. Love what you love. I have tried so many times to get into NieR Automata, and I just can't. This is not my thing. So when they announced this, I was like, all right, like, well, okay. The raids themselves, the battles were really cool. They had some really cool mechanics.
Very fun.
The story, was there a story?
The gear was amazing. Most of the gear.
The gear. It was just fan service, and it was all very samey for the first two dungeons.
You know what? I will buy two of the same dress if there is some sort of slight difference in it.
That's fair.
Yeah, I will say this. I think the story, especially knowing the incredible depth, the unique storytelling devices, everything that Yoko Taro is capable of. I don't think the story lived up to either 14's quality of storytelling or Yoko Taro's.
Now, if you go back.
But because I do want to keep a good thing as well in this, because again, Shadowbringers was a phenomenal expansion, and I think we've been going pretty hard on the critiques in the last 20 minutes. But with all of that said, the actual raids, I do really like.
They were good.
I love the music. I think a lot of the mechanics and things are great. I think there's some really interesting little like Easter egg details and all kinds of stuff. I loved the one where the buildings come up through the floor. Like, that's so buck wild, and the music is amazing. And So all of that I actually love about the raids, and I do enjoy when they pop in the actual like raid queue, even though people bail on them because they can be a little spicy still. But the actual story, I think, was not the full quality that either of the creators could have delivered. But I think the actual raids themselves were cool, and we saw
Very
some
fun.
innovation.
Yeah.
Super fun.
And if you go back, there's we did an episode with Anonymous too, just deep diving into that NieR story, which made it make a little tiny bit more sense. But yeah, I mean, TLDR is they had this story that was heavily built off of the NieR and Drakengard stuff, but if you didn't play that, you didn't know what was going on, and that's not how collaborations in other games should work. But the fights themselves and stuff were great. The music was great, but narratively it flopped. It flopped hard.
If we talk about the Q&A in the future, there is a question that it's my NieR collaboration for you, Fusion. The way you feel about that NieR collaboration.
Okay.
There were words spoken about Kingdom Hearts and what a collaboration might look like. Not that it's ever going to happen, but what it might look like. And Yoshi P said something like, well, it would have to be more of an integration of the two. And I'm like, if you don't do this to me, do not bring that here. I am.
I mean, we already had Yokai Watch. What's the worst they could do, right?
Well, I mean, we already had the freaking Omega tier where we saw a bunch of shit from other Final Fantasy. It's not like they could put any Disney in.
I don't know. I'm afraid that they won't put any Final Fantasy or Disney in. They will just put in Kingdom Hearts. That's my fear. That's
Sora.
yeah. Well,
but
that's just me being a curmudgeon.
I mean, that's the
but
problem,
I think they've
though.
learned from this.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
I really
absolutely.
think they have. So my immediate response was, oh God, no. But I think that they have truly learned, and they would go to better steps to integrate it in a way that actually makes sense this time.
Right. I mean, and that's what I said too. The best part about the NieR raid is that they decided not to do collaborations for this expansion. We have things that are Final Fantasy XIV stories as the raids in Final Fantasy XIV. Not that they haven't done it
of the Realm is
well
great so
before.
far.
Yeah, like Evilly stuff was really good. They integrated that really well. They carried it through Boja, and then they just dropped it.
They made it part of 14 though.
Right.
More,
I mean, even before even before we had Return to Evilise, we knew that Gaius was from like Dalmasca and stuff like that. We had those little drops and stuff, so it was already part of that world. It wasn't like they're like, all right, and we'll take this from 12 and we'll just slap it on here. Like that's not how it worked. And so yes, more of that is if you're gonna tie in stuff, that's how you do it. And I think they learned that, and that's why I think the raids are working as well as they are right now, narratively and storyline wise in 14.
I hope the next ones to come are like big history lore dumps.
Yeah,
like this is what happened in the first Umbral Calamity or whatever, shit like that.
Yeah.
I would know about that stuff.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see.
Hildebrand raid.
No.
I mean, at some point we have to deal with Asura, or maybe not. But that was a cool kind of breadcrumbing that did not ever go anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had forgotten about that with Boja too. You're totally right.
Yeah. Cool.
I feel like they instead decided to interpret the queen, like the chair, as being the many-armed entity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not the Asura the Primal.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see it somewhere else. I mean, some of the other stuff.
I was just gonna say, it is funny because Shadowbringers, I think, still to this date is many, many people's absolute favorite expansion, and the actual core expansion itself was absolutely phenomenal. Like we talked about, unforgettable, game changing, worth every accolade, worth every single thing, just so incredible. And yet, the bonus content for it had its strengths and weaknesses. You know, maybe it was just very hard to follow suit after Shadowbringers.
Right. And it's interesting too. I mean, if you've been listening to this episode, you're like, okay, he said it was like the golden era, but then he's complaining about all this stuff, which just shows you how good that main scenario was, right? That's just how incredible they wrote that.
We can't touch on content though and not mention the weapons quests, because that was one area where the fights themselves, I was like, But the story for the weapons was one of, I think,
Well, I mean,
most
so you had
profound.
well, hold on now, because the fights there were different types of the fights, though. All right, so with the weapons, that first one we did Ruby weapon, which was remember
I was like,
Ruby
what
weapon?
are you guys talking about?
I mean, you're fighting the thing, and then all of a sudden it's Nail Van Darnus, and it's like you're fighting in Cartno,
so
and
cool.
it was insane. I lost my shit during phase 2. That was like my thing for that patch. I would go and queue up for trials, and I'd get Ruby weapon, and then you see like there's a new player, and you're just like, and inevitably that phase transition. What the hell is going on? And I'm just like, yeah, buddy. That was really cool. But then you also had, right, again, they experimented a little bit. They're like, we're going to have you do an instance where you pile it back. Yeah. All right.
Could have been better. I don't know if you guys remember, but
could have been better.
The first like bit of that we had, I was not impressed at all. I was like, oh look, we have color-coded army brats, army orphans.
Yeah, that was.
I'm not impressed at all, but the story got.
But then, and then we also had a first in where they gave us a new little just instanced hub with Wordlet, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
and again with Boja and Gonganos, but having that just that little area just to
and the whole
expand
with
the
Gaius.
world, the Gaius stuff.
It was not a redemption arc. It was a self-acceptance arc. I was a bad guy. I thought that was very interesting too.
I baby cried at the end. Like it was such a really cool. And then you have like the
Milkman.
Milkman.
The worst.
That
the worst
bastard.
villain. The worst villain.
Burn out the good or the bad or whatever. Whatever. That was creepy as hell, and it was great. It was great. I like genuinely hated this man. Xenos could have learned a thing or two. Maybe Xenos didn't drink his milk. That's it. We figured it out.
I hate Xenos too. I'm just gonna say
that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of good stuff, a lot of good storytelling in that the weapon quest line too. Then of course, I mean, a couple like house. I mean, that's the bulk of it, right? But we also had stuff like there was only one dungeon a patch in Shadowbringers, which was kind of a bummer after having 2 for so long. It really made those expert roulettes drag a little bit. We didn't get a deep dungeon, which is kind of a bummer, but
that's what we had. I mean, they switched it around. We got Boja.
We still had Boja, yeah. So it wasn't like we didn't have that.
They used their time. Yeah, they used their time instead of making dungeons that very, very quickly fall by the wayside to make bigger content that does also eventually fall by the wayside, but gives us more of a variety of things too.
And then of course, I think the biggest crime of Shadowbringers, there was no Hildebrand quest.
But you did get a cool cameo.
Yeah.
So
I was a little bit.
The first time I saw somebody post that, I was like, "Wait, what?"
I was a little bit interested to see what they were going to do with him because he fell into a portal. He was going somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, what stupid shit's
Obviously,
to him
he's
on
going
the first?
to the first. Duh.
But perhaps not. I don't know. Don't be mad at me. I'm not a big Hildebrand.
It's all
fan.
your fault.
I didn't care that he didn't show up.
What don't you like about just dipping your hands in some salamander oil and just rubbing them all over
stupid people?
Farcical nonsense people. Yeah.
He just fails his way through.
Yeah.
But
I mean, for all that we didn't get some of that and that some of the bonus content, I thought some of the bonus dungeons we got in Shadowbringers were really great. A few of them are so fantastic. And then especially those ones that came out like right after release. They were really
the twinning is
twinning.
Yes. Oh, it's something I wanted to mention earlier, actually. You finish. I'm sorry. You go.
Oh, no. All I was going to say is that so there was all of that, and then a little bit more of a mixed, I think, feeling on particularly the raids and other bonus content, although there were some good innovations and things with that as well. But one thing that I do think knocks it out of the park, like as the final thing with Shadowbringers, was that 5.3 culmination. That story leading up to it, those moments. 5.3, I think, is the single patch that has emotionally destroyed me the most. I just sobbed it doesn't feel like the expansion is complete unless you have really gone through all of that. And the expansion on its own is fantastic. But once you've been through that 5.3 journey, it was such a powerful culmination of narrative.
It's one of those things too. For me personally, like obviously, like what we had in game, right, was just oh my god, the way they brought it kind of to an end, right, on the first was just beautifully done. But then that damn song, To the Edge, the lyrics in that song, and then hearing about Soken. Man,
Seeing Yoshi P made me cry. Seeing Yoshi P cry made me cry.
and then
I was already crying, but then I was crying
like
more.
tying the lyrics into the narrative of 14, but then tying the lyrics into the narrative of real life, and it's just like.
And his battle with cancer, for anybody who doesn't know, because we found out retroactively that Soken, the composer for the music, for anyone again who might be like newer or not totally know, had been battling cancer during much of the actual like time he was working.
He did this song in the hospital. Like he brought in some equipment and stuff, and he was working in the hospital while doing cancer treatments. And it's
so
just like,
good.
Yeah, and he was very clear about the fact that he wanted to because it helped distract him, and it was like gave him some purpose.
And he also
Not that Square Enix was like working him to the bone.
Yeah, he wasn't.
And he was
made to do that.
worried. Yeah, he was worried that it wouldn't like be up to par because he was doing it in the hospital, and it's probably one of the favorites of.
and then and then Ishikawa was like, I was giving you so many changes to do, you bastard. Like,
Yeah,
like
the team
didn't know. The team had no idea. It's
other
it's
than Yoshi P,
wild. But yeah, To the Edge. I think that's definitely towards the top of my list of all 14 songs. It's just there's so many interpretations that it has now.
Yep.
The thing I was gonna bring up a moment ago, again throwing back to the very first thing we talked about, like something memorable from this was the freaking memes that came out of the twinning music. And how even the dev team came back around and made their own little video.
Danced on stage at
Yep.
FanFest doing the and then it was also the dance was in the Primal's music video for it.
Yep.
They really
It just
embrace
shows-
that.
Yeah, it shows how much they love their game and they love how much we love their game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Did it?
that's Shadowbringers, everybody.
There's so much more.
Oh,
There
yeah.
just is.
Do we do an Endwalker retrospective? I feel like we're kind of in Endwalker still, right?
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Yeah,
I think we do it after the last patch, maybe in the run up.
After the 0.5 part,
Yeah.
however many parts they have to space it apart.
Yeah, like leading up to the next expansion.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's a good time to do it. So it's done for now. Woo!
Yeah, we did it.
10,000 years. All right, that's
I'm
gonna
free.
do it here. Let's wrap this up, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If you want, you can find me on the internet at all the things Ralfldrg, ROFLDRG. That's Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Zen.
Hi.
I am on Twitter at @Sneedra_A. I am on Twitch and YouTube at plus the word, one the number, shot the word. On Twitch there are underscores, and on YouTube there are not. There you go.
Aldino, this is your time to shine.
Here and only here. Also, Twitter. I try and use that usually. I mean, mostly just to retweet.
Every so
tweet
often, I
things
see
that I
Aldino like one of my tweets, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I looked at
he's
it.
here.
It's good.
He's
I'm
social
here.
media-ing.
Yeah, I'm doing it a little bit. Mostly, I've been in the comments on our YouTube though. Those are fun because there's a lot of people who want to continue the conversation there. So that's another place you can find me. If you throw anything about balance, I will come in there and I will talk to you. Probably.
I'm gonna steal this back really quick. There was somebody who put a comment in our oh my god, my brain's gone. In our show with Rin recently. It was like, it was so nice to see a group who could talk about the balance of jobs without getting angry and just be chill. I was like, that's the nicest comment like we've ever gotten.
it was a great. I mean, I think I said this last week too because I was out because I had COVID. But that was a fantastic episode. I thought the discussion went so good during that episode.
And it's a tough conversation.
Yeah.
It is a tough conversation. I mean, it goes to show that you can be passionate about things. You can even have strong feelings about things at certain topics, but you can still anchor yourself in your love of the game and the community and in maintaining, an atmosphere where it doesn't feel like everybody's being ripped to shreds, like piranhas in the water just shredding each other.
No, but it's been so great to read the comments recently. There've been so many really just pleasant people.
So yeah, Twitter, in the comments on our YouTube and on Plus. I'm not gonna do it. Plus One Shot.
That's the word.
I'm in a few of the games. Thank you, Fusion.
I got you.
But that's it for me.
So nice.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Rook.
Yes, hello. You can find me on Twitch, usually 2 to 3 days a week, at Rookery, ROOKURI. You can also find me over on YouTube at Rookery, and we did just finally, at long last, finish up officially my first reactions playthrough of Endwalker. I played it back at release 72 years later, but because we do usually 1 to 2
You look
videos.
really good for 72 plus.
Thanks, I've been, eating the souls of young virgins.
Oh, okay.
So, other than that, yeah, you can find me on YouTube also at Rookery. You can watch me be a huge mess about the game we love in real time. And you can also find me on Twitter at Rookery_. Honestly, looking back on 10 years of Final Fantasy XIV was so much fun with all of you. It was really cool to hear even your thoughts and, portions of the game that I wasn't there to hear and go through even the portions that have brought us this far. And I can't wait for the next.
Yeah,
10.
Rook is 72. Imagine how old the rest of us are. Back in my
You're all
day.
ancient. You're ancient. But yeah.
What?
You're ancient. If anybody has not watched the previous portions of our podcast going through every era of Final Fantasy XIV, definitely look for them, and I'm sure we'll have all the links and stuff in the comments as well, going from 1.0
Correctamundo.
We talked about this game a lot.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like every weekend of the year.
If you want to just contact kind of like all of us cumulatively,
Yeah, that works.
Cumulatively.
encompassingly. That could be word, right? That could be used too. Email us, aetheryteradio@gamerescape.com. You can tweet at us at aetheryteradio. You can also find us as Gamer Escape on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Discord. We've got a Aetheryte Radio channel over on the Discord, discord.gg/gamerescape if you want to talk to us about the show. If you are watching on Twitch right now, thank you everybody for tuning in live. Make sure to hit that follow button if you want to, keep up with us here every Saturday, noon, PST. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for catching the VOD. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment, because
Hit that bell or whatever that stuff is.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll show that algorithm who's boss, everybody. And yeah, that is going to do it for us for this week.
Sweet.
So that is going to be it. We will see you back here next time. Have a good weekend.
Goodbye.
Bye.